Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, the mood in Minnesota shifted way too fast. A trade rumor is circling a major piece of this roster. A new signing is shaking up the most sensitive battle on the team. There is an internal decision keeping an important name in place. There is also a veteran weighing his own future. And the part that is not even really about roster moves comes with a straight-up stay-tuned vibe. That last story could really flip the mood of this purple and gold fan base. You can feel something building here. Let's get into it because what is coming next starts heating up in a real hurry. Some news hits the fan base before it ever reaches the field. This is one of those stories. The noise picked up fast, took over the conversation, and had a lot of people wondering whether Minnesota still believed in the direction this team was heading with one of the most explosive pieces of its offense. That question alone tells you how serious this got. When a player mixes huge talent with repeated off-field issues, the conversation changes immediately. It stops being only about what he gives you on Sundays. It becomes a debate about limits, patience, and even what the team should do before his trade value starts to slip. Right in the middle of all that, the name Jordan Addison stepped into the spotlight, and that is when the debate really caught fire. On one side, people were pushing for an immediate trade, trying to cash in on the value he still has because of the talent he shows on the field. On the other side, there were people looking at the Vikings offense and thinking this: you do not just hand away a guy who creates separation, punishes secondaries, and keeps growing next to Justin Jefferson. That is where the conversation gets tight, because both sides have a case. But the franchise made its choice. The Vikings decided to exercise the fifth-year option on Addison's contract. In practical terms, that keeps the wide receiver tied to the team through the 2028 offseason, and that changes the timeline in a big way, and let's say it the right way. A decision like that does not happen by accident. It shows that even with all the recent noise, the team still sees Addison as an important part of the present and the immediate future. This was not a slow, hesitant move. It was a clear message. Rob Brzezinski made that crystal clear when he described Addison as an impact player and an important piece for the team. And when the team talks like that in public in the middle of heavy rumors, it is because it wants to cool off the trade talk and show real conviction. Minnesota knows it is trying to compete right now. That matters more than people think. This does not look like a team willing to tear apart an offensive weapon on impulse, especially when Kevin O'Connell needs stability around his quarterback in 2026. Now, that still does not erase what is bothering people. Addison still has not posted a 1,000-yard season. In 2025, he had drops in moments that frustrated the fan base, and the weight of the off-field issues is still there, just sitting in the room, staring everybody down. Nobody is naive. This purple and gold fan base knows how to separate talent from full trust. He has already shown the talent. The trust is what he still has to earn back. I look at this decision and understand the team's thinking. It is simple. If Jordan Addison locks in, plays free, and stays out of trouble, Minnesota keeps a receiver duo that can terrorize any defense in the league. That is the upside. But if he slips again, the conversation comes back heavier, with less patience and a whole lot less room for excuses. And that is where things could flip fast. So lock in on this read, because it is coming from the stands, not from some polished talking point. The Vikings bet on the talent. But now Addison has to back up that bet on and off the field, and that already has the temperature rising. But hang on a little longer because the next story centers on a major defensive name and could open a serious wound on this roster. Now the conversation flips to the other side of the ball, and this is where things get even more sensitive. Because when it involves leadership on defense, it is not just about production, it is about identity, presence, that one guy who holds the group together when the game gets tight. And when trade talk starts to swirl around that kind of player, the fan base immediately gets uneasy. You can feel that tension building. Behind the scenes, this story started gaining momentum because of money, a request for a raise, stalled negotiations, and other teams watching closely. Put all of that together, and you get the classic setup for a possible exit. And when that kind of rumor shows up, speculation does not take long to grow, especially when the player is still producing at a high level. That brings us to Jonathan Greenard. He is a major name in this defense, a recent Pro Bowler, and a player who changed the impact of the pass rush the moment he arrived. That is not an exaggeration. He creates steady pressure, makes life miserable for quarterbacks, and changes the way opponents build their offense. That kind of impact is not easy to replace. But the central issue here is this: Greenard wants to be paid like an elite player. Right now, he is making around $19 million per season. He is reportedly looking for something close to $30 million a year. That gap is massive. That changes everything, because this is not just about keeping the player. It is about how much you are willing to invest in him. Rob Brzezinski himself was direct when he said he wants Greenard on the team. He called him a leader, a captain, and an essential piece. And that was not empty talk. When the front office speaks that way, it is sending a clear message that it does not want to lose the player. But there is always a but, because on the other side, there is financial reality, and there is also interest from other franchises, including the Eagles, who are already monitoring the situation. That is where the negotiation game starts to drag out. Nobody is going to sprint to close a deal right now, especially with the draft approaching and other options still out there on the market. If that trade does happen, the impact would be heavy, because the edge rusher group would lose depth in a major way. It would basically come down to Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner. Two good names, no doubt. But even then, Greenard's absence would change the level of the defense as a whole, and that could show up quickly on Sundays. From a fan perspective, this is tense, because you understand the player's side. He produced, and he wants to be paid accordingly. But you also understand the team's side, because it has to balance salary and roster construction. This is not just about stats. It is about building a team. It is about thinking about the present without wrecking the future. And lock this in. What looks like a negotiation right now could turn into the decision that defines the level of this defense during the season. Because if Greenard leaves, it is not just one piece walking out the door. It is a real shift in identity. That is the part people cannot ignore. So keep that energy up, because the next story involves a name that has carried years of Vikings football on his back, and he may be staring down a decision nobody wants to face. There are moments when the game does not start on the field. It starts inside a player's head, and when that kind of moment shows up around someone who helped define an era for this team, it hits differently. You can feel it even before a decision is made. This is not just about production. It is about legacy, history, what that name means to who lives and breathes Vikings football every single day, and that is exactly where things stand right now. The name at the center of it is Harrison Smith, one of the greatest defensive leaders in recent Vikings history, a guy who has lived through generations, roster changes, highs and lows, and was always there through all of it, always producing, always setting the tone. But time gets everybody in the end. Smith is already 37 years old, and even though he is still playing at a solid level, the question is no longer whether he can still play. The question has become whether he wants to keep putting himself through all of this, because the people who follow this closely know it is not just Sunday. It is hard practices, recovery, built-up pain, and a demanding routine. And as the years pile up, that weighs on a player more than any stat line ever could. That reality hits hard. Even so, in 2025, he showed he still has something left. More than 700 snaps played, interceptions, instincts in coverage. Is he the same player he was years ago? Of course not. But he is still a relevant player. And maybe the most interesting part is how the team is handling it. Kevin O'Connell made it clear that he is not going to pressure him. He is going to give him space. He is going to respect the player's timeline. And that says a lot about who Harrison Smith is inside that locker room. Not everybody gets treated that way. Looking at it as a fan, this hits differently, because it is not just about building a roster. It is about watching a possible chapter come to an end. And nobody likes facing that, especially when the player became a symbol of the team. I keep thinking about this. Is there still one more chance for him to lift a Super Bowl in this jersey? Because deep down, it feels like that might be the one thing that could pull him back. One last shot. One last run. So let me hear from you. What do you think he should do? Come back for one more season, or walk away exactly as things are? Because no matter what the answer is, the impact of that decision is massive. It is not just on the field. It reaches the locker room too. But stay with me, because if this story hits with emotion, the next one goes straight into the heart of the most important battle on the team right now. And that is where things really start to boil. Now hold on to this one, because when the subject is quarterback, there is no middle ground. You either solve it, or it becomes a headache all year long. And what is happening in Minnesota now has everything it takes to split opinions, create tension, and shape the direction of the season before it even begins. You can already feel the divide. The situation is easy to understand but tough to accept. There is no clear owner of the job. There is no guaranteed name. And for a team that wants to seriously compete, that is always a risk. Right in the middle of it all, you have J.J. McCarthy, young, full of expectations, but coming off a season that was at best uneven. He had some good moments. He showed mobility. He created points with his legs. But he also stacked up mistakes, interceptions, and questionable decisions. Most importantly, he did not convince people that he is the guy without debate, and that is the key issue. But instead of making life easier for him, the team did the opposite. It brought in serious competition, and not just to fill out the room. This is a real battle. Kyler Murray arrived hungry for a fresh start. Carson Wentz is in the mix too, trying to prove he can still play at a high level. And suddenly it becomes the kind of quarterback fight everybody knows well. Workouts, organized team activities, preseason, every detail matters. Every mistake gets magnified. Every play becomes an argument. Kevin O'Connell made it clear that McCarthy is back, training hard, and in the building on a regular basis. That is a positive. It shows commitment, but it guarantees nothing, because once he gets on the field, he is going to have to prove a whole lot more, and that is where the debate really gets hot. Some people believe Wentz is a better fit in this system. Others see Murray as the natural favorite, and McCarthy is stuck right in the middle of it, trying not to lose ground. I look at this situation and think it can be healthy. It can also turn messy in a hurry, because quarterbacks need confidence. They need continuity, and when you open the door to a full-on competition, you gain competitiveness. You can also lose stability. That balance is hard to manage. At the same time, one thing everybody knows is that O'Connell has a track record of getting the best out of quarterbacks. He has done it before, and maybe he is betting on that exact formula again. But the question hanging over everything is direct. Who is going to be the guy when week 1 gets here? Because this decision is not just going to define the offense. It is going to define the team's ceiling, and that is what raises the stakes here. And if you thought that was already enough pressure, just wait until you hear what surrounds the biggest name in this battle coming up next. Some exits look calm on the surface, but the deeper you look, the more you realize there is a whole lot more going on underneath. That is exactly the feeling here. There is more to this than meets the eye. Because this was not just a change of direction, it was the end of a massive bet that, at one point, looked like the future of an entire franchise. And now that same name arrives in Minnesota surrounded by expectation, doubt, and that familiar question: is this finally going to work? We are talking about Kyler Murray. After years with the Cardinals, his exit came with that classic line that it was better for both sides. But when Arizona head coach Mike LaFleur says Murray was a problem when he was standing on the opposite sideline, you understand the level of talent we are talking about. That kind of statement carries weight, but talent was never really the biggest issue with Murray. The real questions were always somewhere else: adaptation, consistency, style of play. And that starts to matter now in Minnesota, because Kevin O'Connell's system demands quick reads, presence in the pocket, and a heavy amount of under-center football. That is not the environment Murray grew up in as an NFL quarterback. For years, he played mostly out of the shotgun. Different rhythm, different structure, and that is where the big debate begins. Some people believe he is the natural favorite to start, but others have raised serious concerns. Ben Lieber openly said you cannot lock Murray in as the clear owner of the job right now. He said there are too many questions about how he fits within this scheme. And that is not a small issue, because this is not some minor adjustment. This is about changing habits that were built over years. And at the NFL level, that can be the difference between success and failure. Looking at it as a fan, this is one of those bets that can either blow up in your face or turn into a massive win. There is no middle ground. If Murray fits, adapts, and plays at the level he flashed earlier in his career, this offense changes tiers immediately. It becomes something hard to contain. That is the upside everyone sees. But if he does not fit, then it is right back to square one. And all that optimism flips into frustration fast. That is what makes this so heavy. Because it is not only about who starts at quarterback, it is about the direction of the entire team. So keep this in mind. What looks like just a new opportunity might actually be the single biggest decision of this season. And that is why all eyes are on this situation. And after all of that, it becomes impossible not to stop for a second and think about what this team really is right now. It is also about what this team can still become. And look, after all of that, you can feel pretty clearly that this team is living through one of those moments that decides where things are headed. It is not just about talent. It is not just about the roster. It is about decisions. Some are betting on potential. Others are trying to hold the structure together. And others are simply waiting for time to tell them what to do. You have Jordan Addison still being back despite the risk. You have Jonathan Greenard in the middle of a contract standoff that could shake the defense. You have Harrison Smith looking at his own story and deciding whether he wants one more chapter. And on offense, you have a battle that could change everything, with Kyler Murray carrying hope and doubt at the same time. That is a lot riding on a few key calls. This is not a calm stretch. This is real-time team building. This is the kind of moment that separates an ordinary team from one that turns into something bigger. So let me ask you this. Do you believe this group is ready to take the next step? Or is it still missing one key piece? Write your comment and let your opinion be heard. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go.